Hey, thanks for tuning in to If I Had More Time. Today we dive back into Acts 17, where we look at Athens, where there's an idol on every corner and a debate for every day. How do we make the unknown God known in our communities like Paul did? Let's take a look.
I heard somebody say, you never trust a minister that doesn't walk with a limp. I think zeal's good. I think passion is good, but I really love it when it's balanced with experience.
I have passion, but let me submit to other leadership
Yeah.
and look at someone's fruit who's been established for a while and come underneath their leadership. And even some of the ideas I might have, submit to, that's not the way I would do it.
And one of the things I've heard from Christians is, hey, I have no agenda. And I think there are times I have conversations with no agenda, sure, whatever. But I've got an agenda.
Yeah.
I was sent with a mandate from Jesus. I like my way of doing it better than your way of not doing it.
Here we go. We're
Boom.
back.
We're back, dude.
Episode 12
Come on.
in new chairs.
In new chairs that swivel.
That swivel. I do. Yeah, the swivel makes it very nice. Because I'm not going to, there was a few episodes where after the episode was done, I had a little, so like looking at you this way.
Oh, yeah.
So
This
now
allows
I
us
can,
to,
now I
like-
can just like, now I can just turn to you.
We can turn.
And knock over things. But we're making slow improvements to our
Yeah.
studio space. And so there's going to be some changes you guys will see over the next few weeks. But we're excited to be back
So excited.
after a week away.
Yeah.
You were up in the Pacific Northwest.
Pacific Northwest, visiting some fam
and
some friends.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
missed you.
Oh, dude, I miss being here. This is one of my favorite. Honestly, this podcast has become one of my favorite things ever.
Come on.
Yeah, I look forward to Mondays. I always look forward to Mondays, but like I really look forward to Mondays now.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
Same.
Oh, okay, good.
And for those of you who are watching, look forward to Tuesdays because that's when we post.
Because that's when we post it.
Yeah, we record these on Mondays.
We'll record on Monday.
So yeah, we jump right back in,
Yeah, dude.
and we're continue on acting through, walking through Acts.
Yep.
Jumped into Acts 17 here, kind of this middle portion here.
Mars Hill.
And so yeah, Mars Hill, which
Yeah.
it's got a lot of, I think there's a lot of like connotation with that name, with that phrase, but
Right.
really cool to look at it from its original context
Yep.
and where we just see some very like interesting teaching and just
Yep.
interesting philosophies and thoughts from. So I'm curious, just in your prep for this message,
Yeah.
just seemed like there's a lot of big concepts, big things. I wonder what you had to cut or what you had to filter down and make work.
Yeah, I mean, so much of it was like this is one of Paul's most like analyzed, scrutinized portions of his ministry. And so to look at Mars Hill, which by the way, if you're listening and you're like, or watching and you're like, Mars Hill, isn't that a church? Like, or wasn't that a church in Seattle that like, was bad or whatever it was? But Mars Hill is basically, it's the translation of the Areopagus, which is the hill of Ares. Ares is Mars, one of their gods. Anyways, so the history of this not giant massive, but this hill is that's where Ares was put on trial for, I believe, killing another one of the other children of the gods, and he was found not guilty. But that all of a sudden that became like, this is the place where we have trials. Yeah. This is the place where we have all that. By the time we get to Paul, though, it's not necessarily about trials that lead to a verdict of death or life or imprisonment or whatever that might be. This was more of you're being put on trial for your thoughts. Are these things that are now going to be promoted and propagated within our culture? And so they wanted to hear these new strange ideas, and that's why they brought him up there. And then that's where, again, you start to see a lot of the scrutiny come in. They either think it's one of the coolest things ever because Paul connected with culture and was able to communicate the gospel in a certain way, or they think, or the other side of it is he watered it down. We can get into that later, but he watered it down, and he didn't see very many people saved and all of that. So the interesting thing, though, and this is where I kind of want to rewind if we can, is right. Paul's there by himself. He's in Athens by himself, which shout out to one of the questions was, what year did Acts 17 take place? And it was roughly around 80, 50, or 51.
Okay.
So Paul is he's in his mid 40s, 45-ish, we'll say. So when you picture Acts 17, whether it's in Thessalonica, Berea, or in Athens, you have to see not Paul is like some young, ambitious guy going for it, right?
Sure.
Some young, evangelistic, rock star. He's 45 and has had his back shredded to bits. He's got scars. He's probably got a limp. Like you think about like he's had some wear and tear on his
established
body.
now,
He's established, dude.
Yeah.
This guy's done some stuff. And I think, okay, let's go there.
Yeah.
And then we'll circle back because I think it's great. I think it's wonderful when young people with zeal and enthusiasm, take stuff on.
Yeah.
Go to the hill.
Yeah.
Go try to engage culture. I think that's great.
Yeah.
But there is something when you have somebody who's has been tested, has been weighed.
Yeah.
And has gone through it a little bit, now engaging with.
Right.
It's like, you have intelligent stuff to say.
Right. Yeah.
You have experience that backs it. You know what I mean?
For sure. I've been spending a lot of time with our young adults here at Rhythm, and they're great, and I love them. And there's
phenomenal crew.
It's funny, you see certain. I see certain people around the room, and there's definitely people with like zeal and passion and fervor. Maybe God has really radically saved them from something, and from a crazy situation or whatever the case might be, and they have this like, they want to change the world all in a day, all in a day.
Yep.
And I think that's like maybe something unique about this generation is that they have there's just a lot of that going on.
Sure.
And that's great, and we love that. I love to see that. And I think, with that, I always like to try and, not want to say caution them, but always, hey, look at, again, people in that next stage.
Yep.
Because the goal is longevity.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so, passion and zeal is great. I think God puts that in people, and you should nurture that and not want to lose that in any way, shape, or form. But there is conversations about effectiveness, longevity, and keeping that passion over the long term. Because I think what you and I have also seen, which can happen, and this isn't to place this on everyone, but there's a lot of people who do have that passion and zeal in their 20s and, maybe when they first come to Christ. And then 10 years on the road, they've burnt themselves out,
right?
And because they haven't done it necessarily the right way, and they think that that passion will carry them through their whole life. But there is discipline, there is health, there is learning and the knowledge and staying with something, even when maybe your emotions aren't into it. And so that's an interesting kind of thought to think through.
Yeah,
Paul having weathered whatever storms that came his way all those early years of his being changed from Saul to Paul and all different stuff, and now in his 40s having gone through stuff and still being effective in his ministry. And I wonder, obviously it's not in the text, but I wonder how different. I wonder if it looks different than when he is in his 20s to where he is now in his 40s. Like, does he approach it differently? Does he? He's a lot of passion still. He still seems to be on fire.
Oh,
but I wonder how different it is from those 20s and 40s.
Well, when as we jump in, these next weeks into Corinth and all that stuff, and then you read the letters that he wrote, right? That dude kept that passion, that zeal. I think zeal's good. I think passion is good, but I really love it when it's balanced with experience, when it's balanced with.
That's good.
When I was young and in ministry, I had a ton of zeal.
Yeah.
I was zealous. I was like, let's freaking go.
For sure.
But I didn't have a lot of that experience, and I heard somebody say, you never trust a minister that doesn't walk with a limp. You've wrestled with God, you've had your Jacob moments, and you've prevailed. Where I think today, we see it all the time, right? Where people will think that they've got experience or they've got success because they have vanity metric success.
Right.
They've had a certain amount of followers. They've gotten some sort of like notoriety or fame because something went viral or that type of stuff. And that doesn't mean that you're like tried and true successful.
Right.
You have to wait 20, 30 years down the road and you look behind you and you go, there's disciples and there's leaders.
Yeah. Good fruit.
You see like, wow, years of good fruit.
Yeah.
And that's where we're seeing Paul at now in his ministry is years, and like fruit and churches that have started and all of that. Right. If young leaders, if you'd listen to me just for a moment, keep going, this is your season to plow and to sow. And it might even look like you're reaping at times, and that's great, but it really is the 20 years from now, and you're looking back, or the 30 years from now, and going, oh, here's relationships that are still around that you were beneficial to them, you helped grow them in ministry, and then you get to that point to where you continue to sow, but you also start to reap.
Right.
Being up in Washington, it was great because I got to, one, spend some time with long-term friends, but also long-term friends that at one point were like guys I met with weekly, around the table, and we talked leadership and we talked discipleship, and I had a hand in helping raise them up in the Lord. And it was amazing. Yeah. That was like, and to see like the fruit of their lives now, one that I'm still in their lives, that you've seen the natural progression from like, mentor, father in the faith type person to friend. Yeah. What you want to see even with your own children. Right. Totally. And so it was great. So it was awesome to see. And then to see them with their kids. Yeah. So it was, we got to hang with Sean Cannell. Come on. And his two boys. Shout out Sean. And then with Spencer Hurst and Priscilla Hurst, and man, I could tell you stories as far as we won't go there, but like love them. And then their daughter Paris, who's just an amazing young woman, and Preston, their little guy. So he's not so little; he's super tall. Anyways, but I think that's to kind of, I guess, reel it back. Paul's a proven dude at this time. Yeah, and he's got maturity under his belt, and I don't think I really started to hit kind of that phase of my life for my ministry to like maybe my mid-30s. Yeah, and I'd gone through some stuff for sure.
Well, it's funny. I think about like I've got young boys, and they argue with me all the time. Yeah, they'll say, "No, Dad, that's not," and it's like funny. Like you there comes a point where you're kind of like arguing with someone at a young age, and you just realize, you just won't get it until, you know what I mean? And like, again, I think especially with young adults, there's that fervor, and what I'm balancing right now, especially when hanging out with our young adults, is so many of them have and you just go, you know what? Because I think about when I was their age, and I was the same way. Yeah. You think, no, you don't know.
Bro, 100%.
Yeah. Yep. You guys are old. You don't know. Okay, boomer, right? You're just like, And there's an element of, letting people kind of learn and gain the experience, because the only way to get experience is to gain it, right? Yep. And then also there's a super valuable in being humble enough to go, I have passion, but let me submit to other leadership, and look at someone's fruit who's been established for a while and come underneath their leadership, and even some of the ideas I might have, submit to. That's not the way I would do it, right? And be willing to listen and be corrected and all that, And so, but it's just funny, like, it's funny. I'll pick on your son Israel because I love your son. Yeah. But I remember like when I've known you guys forever. Israel was a young teenage boy and would argue with me about certain movies or be
Star Wars, dude.
No, dude, they're gonna start the whole thing over. I'm like, they just invested $4 billion. They're not gonna do that. No, I saw some YouTuber say, and I'm like, okay, I get it, dude. Go with, but like it's the same thing. It's like, well, you just won't get it until you get older, and there's an element of that I think that experience is such a good teacher. Yeah, the time is such a valuable teacher. Yeah, and we need to value the people who have the experience and the time and have weathered the storms. Yeah, and their life shows good fruit. Yeah, and if that's what you're trying to be, you should definitely have more people in your life that you are submitted to.
I can't echo that enough. I'd also say too, like and I know this isn't necessarily where we're going, but it does kind of tie in to the message a little bit, like, is making sure that whoever you are going to learn from, that you do look at the fruit of their life. Yeah. And that it's not this that they have charisma, but they have fruit that backs it up.
Judging the right fruit. Dude.
Exactly. And they model the things. Not to say this, like, because then what happens is that, like, all of a sudden now you have a bunch of, like, young dudes that are critical of older guys. And they're like, I don't know if I should follow George, man. Yeah. Dude, I saw him on the court the other day and he wasn't very nice. Yeah. It's not very Christian-like. What happens on the court stays on the court. Anyway,
God is still sanctifying me in all areas of my life,
But when you think about it, so you have, in this particular passage, right, they send Paul to Athens. So the crew gets together and says, Paul, you're going to Athens. Right. Now, I don't know if it was like Paul's like, I think I should go to Athens, whatever it might be, but you actually see in other parts of in his ministry too, where he submits to what the crew says that he should do.
Right.
As opposed to, no, I'm the leader, I'm the boss. You can't tell me. So he like shows like a level of like mutual submission in these things, which is kind of cool.
Interesting.
And he then does leave. I'm not sure how old Silas was at this time, so I can't necessarily speak to that. But he does leave Timothy with Silas and the other companions back in Berea and Thessalonica as he heads in, as they send him off to Athens.
Wow.
So I think that's not all that stuff is really important. But I did want to talk about the Bereans.
Go ahead.
So, and it was that, like, I gave James that whole passage, and he did a great job, especially with dealing like with how to evangelize and setting up great habits in your life to do so. But there's a spot there where they're in Thessalonica, and Paul has his custom. James hit that proper, and then he goes into Berea, and he begins to do the same thing there. But it says that the Bereans were more noble than the Thessalonican Jews, because what they did is they listened to what Paul said and they went back and studied the scriptures about it. And again, this wasn't like when we think about it today, we think more from the critical standpoint of like, I'm going to try to find what's wrong with your message, or I'm going to show how you took that verse out of context, which, by the way, always feel free to do that, and on anyone who teaches, but always do it, please, with a pure heart, because what the Thessalonians are actually trying to do, the Bereans are actually trying to do, is they're trying to see, like, because Paul's saying the Messiah has been here, the Messiah has come,
right?
So they're going back and studying the Old Testament, the Torah, the prophets, everything to see if it's lining up. So they want to go, it really happened. This guy, like, the Messiah really came.
Yeah.
But so that kind of speaks again, if you ever hear anything new today, make sure that you go, or what's new to you study it out as well too. So It's not just one thing to be taught, but when you are taught and then you go and study it, it like solidifies it even more. But again, even to their credit, the Bereans were so there's the diaspora or the diaspora, however you want to say it, right? So when conquering nations came into Israel and Jerusalem, they would grab tons of them and like just shoot them all over the kingdom, right? So, or take them back to where they were. So Thessalonica and Berea, remember, they're not Jerusalem.
Right.
So this group right here is a part of leftovers from, I probably should have studied that a little bit deeper, but they're leftovers from one of the diaspora.
Interesting.
And what you tend to have at this time for Jewish sects, you would have the Pharisees, and the Pharisees were very much on oral tradition. Mm-hmm. You had the Sadducees, and the Sadducees actually didn't even really pay. One, they didn't believe in the resurrection. They also didn't really hold too tightly to Scripture, I believe. And then there was the Essenes, and the Essenes had Scripture, but then they had like their what is it called? Basically like a whole nother kind of like set of rules that help them follow the scriptures. Whatever. Anyways, so, and then, but also at the same time, so with the diaspora, they relied heavily on temple customs and tradition to ground them in their faith. Kind of like what you see a lot of times today with like denominations, right? They hold so tightly. So it's like you don't necessarily know why you do it. You just have done it for years.
Sure.
Now, to that credit, actually, that does help at least center your life still around something of God.
Sure.
So the reason why they say that these guys were more noble is because they just didn't go off some oral tradition, that they actually went back and they went into, like as Paul taught, then they would go and they would search and like, oh, it is in here.
Right.
Oh, the prophecy that Isaiah made, oh my gosh, it is right here.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's massively, I think it just shows, one, it's a biblical literacy that they had and they held to.
Right.
Which, man, today we should have and hold to, because there are whole congregations and there are whole like groups of people that are able to be swayed because they just don't know either A, how to study the Bible to find out it's true, or B, they don't know the Bible, and whoever said whatever they said was really charismatic and really good at it and very convincing and said it with authority, so they believed it.
Yeah. Wow.
So, yeah.
It's interesting.
It's interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
So then now Paul goes off to Athens. I had to hit that. I just couldn't miss. I was like, the Bereans are dope.
Yeah, and so I think that's actually kind of a great segue. So one of the kind of looking at some of the major themes of things that you talked about in the message, right? You had this portion where you talked kind of about kind of this holy distress, right? Mm-hmm. This they're being provoked by idols, and so you have Paul who inside you hit on this. He said the Bible said he was greatly distressed, right? Had this holy grief, anger at what deform what these idols that these people were seeking after and worshiping and things of that nature. And so tying that into our lives and the things that should cause us distress, holy distress, things that we should be on guard and looking out for. And so I'm curious, even tying it to the text, but to us too. But I'm just a question here: what does actually I would say this, yeah. So how would you describe the greatly distressed? How do you think that looks and plays out? And how do we where in your kind of observation of the church and us as believers, where are some areas that we should be more distressed and more have a maybe a frustration or on guard about things that are pulling us away from God?
So on our trip up to Washington, back to the moved up to Marysville when I was 10, so went to middle school, high school there, early college, got married, had kids, started doing ministry there. So it's you go up there and you always look for what's different. If you go back to like a hometown or somewhere you used to visit, it's like, oh, what's different? Totally. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. The building's there, was never there before. Oh, they have a Chick-fil-A. Wow. So as I was driving around, there were some churches that we drove by that back in the day I had known their pastors. We did pastors' lunches there, stuff like that. And now here's that church, because their denomination decided to become affirming. You now have a flag in the corner, right? And it was heartbreaking. Yeah. Because at one point I knew of that church, and I knew young people that went to that church, and then there was actually a few of those situations where you're like, oh, and somewhat similar to where just looking around and seeing different levels of I think about here. I look at the homeless, and I don't want to go too far down that road because I know there's a lot of different opinions and whatnot, all of that. And I know that there's enough, I will say this, I know that in Oceanside there is enough programs, assistance, so on and so forth to help anyone who wants to get off the streets. But I do look at that and man, totally. Like, how did that kid probably in his early 20s who's now, cracked out, methed out, whatever it might be on the streets, like how did we miss that? What could we have done, if anything? So I think I look at that stuff. I look at, it's not even necessarily like injustices, so to speak, but just what's evil, what's grabbing our young people, porn, absolutely. In anything that's kind of pornified, it should irk you in your spirit. Totally. Anything that objectifies other people, that's harmful to other people. I like today a lot of just the random agendas out there promoted by our government. They get me kind of irked, because I'm like, it's not of God. And then kind of think like, well, then what do we do? Well, I think we become vocal about our faith. That's what Paul did, right? At that point, he's provoked, so he becomes vocal about his faith, so that people can know Jesus, they can find freedom. Like that's huge. It isn't always about, and praise the Lord, we live in a nation that allows us the right to vote. Right. So let's freaking vote. Right. And vote as biblically as you can. Yeah. Don't vote to your idealism. Vote to the Bible. So we can do that stuff. We can volunteer at different, organizations and whatnot. But I mean, ultimately, it's the truth that, the truth of Jesus Christ, and that truth sets us free.
That's right.
And so, us being more vocal about our faith and really like standing for it.
That's good. Yeah. It is also like a very, obviously in the text, it's very much alluding to idols, and you hit on that a little bit too. But, so those are, I think, some specific instances and specific examples. Can you maybe speak to what you see, again, whether it's just within the church or even just maybe as a nation, some idols that we struggle with? I know you hit some of them for sure in your message, but what are some idols that you think we struggle with that fight for our attention with God?
Well, I mean, I just think about myself personally, and so many of those things that I talked about, right? Like finances, that can be an idol, real easily, especially down here, and thinking how, I want to buy a house, or I wonder how do I, so you start to dwell too much on finances. I do that sometimes personally. My wife, I love her to death, really easy for her to all of a sudden, like, be what I am all about and can't wait for. And, in the church, I actually just too, in general, I didn't really say this this weekend, but we idolize people. We are such a celebrity culture, and so we get mesmerized by people.
Yeah.
And because they have this many followers on TikTok or Instagram, or they're talented, right. Or they're this musician, a part of this band, or they're this actor. And so like we idolize these people. And it's interesting if you, like when some of these people behind the scenes are just people. Yeah. They got issues too. Yeah. Like what, man, I like D.L. Moody. D.L. Moody once said, like, there is actually the president walked into the room. I think might have been Lincoln, if I can remember the years right. But D.L. Moody, one of the greatest evangelists America had ever seen. And everyone stands to their feet and they're clapping and stuff. And D.L. didn't, which is kind of that's disrespectful, bro. Stand up. But so I don't know if this is true or just story to like represent how like bold he was about things. But he's like, I stand for no man but Christ. Right. And so his thing is like, it's cool, it's the president, whatever. And I think we have I don't know if it's beyond Western culture, right? Beyond Western civilization. We want to cling to something. We want to look to someone. We want to say, oh my gosh, you're George Coltrane. Right. Or, oh my gosh, you're, so yeah, people idolization. And then the hard thing is that when people become idols, if you don't want to be an idol, that's a hard thing to, American Idol, right?
Yeah.
We have a big show. But that's a hard thing because you have so much, people place a lot of expectation on you when they start to idolize you. And I think, you see it in musicians all the time, like their sophomore album, is it ever as good as their first?
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, totally. Or, and then they're blamed for it or whatever it might be. It's like, of course you put your best stuff out on your first one.
Right, yeah.
Or just the anxiousness that you have to always outdo yourself. I think for me, and I'm not saying that I'm an idol, but like I have to preach every Sunday. Right. And it's not always going to be as good as the last week. Totally. Yeah, for sure. And it's so funny, or when you think about the stuff that you create, video wise, and, film wise, like you want it to be better. You want it to be improvement. Yeah. But not always, it doesn't always work out that way. Right. And so then you end up disappointing a lot of people. So don't make idols out of people. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And I think to that end, I think you hit this, but I just think we also make idols out of ourselves so much.
Oh, for sure.
And so, it's funny, one of the things you hit this in one of them. I don't know if you hit them on all three, but something I've just noticed, it's always kind of sat in my spirit. I never really kind of like had the way to like to verbalize it. But there was this whole there's been this whole movement of like self-care and self, and it's fine. Like I'm not trying to demonize it. Like take care of yourself.
Right.
Like that
exactly.
Is
yeah.
Yes. Your body is a temple. Take care of yourself. But I found it interesting. I think especially when that stuff became so, it was in social media and all that stuff. It was so like talked about, and it became this thing. You know, you can't ever do anything because you take care of yourself and boundaries, all this stuff. And it was funny. I grew up in a household. My so blessed to have God fearing parents, my mom and my dad, grandparents, uncles and aunts. But I looked at my mom, I look at my grandma, I look at my aunt, some powerful black women, and their focus was almost never on themselves.
Right.
Their focus was on. They're always involved in church. They're always involved in like whenever there was an opportunity to serve at a place that the Brother Benno's or things of that nature. Homeless shelters. Always.
Yep.
The weekends they're always taking care of the kids and different stuff. And I've never seen them complain.
Right.
And it's funny, the more of people that talk about self-care and it's all about them, it's like, that is a pit,
bro, that
you'll never, ever, ever fill. And I know it's that's just one kind of example, but I find it interesting. Like the thing about idols is that, so we as people were made to serve. We're like, God has put a God-sized hole in our heart. Yep. So you're going to fill it with something.
Right.
And so if you don't fill it with God, then whatever you try and fill it with, you will be at the mercy of that God, that idol in your life, right?
That's right.
And so I find it interesting. You go, okay, you would think that like self-care, yourself, all like take care of yourself, like, oh, okay, that's good to be good. It's gonna be fulfilling, right? Like you're literally, well, what do you want to do today, or what boundaries do you want to set?
Yeah.
And the more what I observed about that kind of like culture or I don't say group, but just that whole kind of mindset was, they seem like the most miserable people I've ever seen,
bro.
And I'm like, but your whole kind of mantra is taking care of yourself, and it's like, yeah, you can never do it enough to where you'll actually be fulfilled.
Yep.
And I'm not to say that like your whole life should be, at the service of, what I mean, like, being a people pleaser and stuff like that nature. But I just found it interesting. You look at the self-care movement, and I would go, the fruit of it doesn't seem to be satisfaction.
The self-care movement came into the church guised under the guise of Sabbath, Sabbath rest, and boundaries.
Right.
And especially if you work in or around a church, you got to have your boundaries and stuff. So, what's really interesting is I would wonder, is the people that are so protective of their Sabbath,
right,
or their boundaries, are they that hardcore around the other sin issues in their life? Are you that hardcore about like, I'm not going to serve an extra 10 hours this week. It's great. Are you not going to look at porn?
Right.
Because that's...
Or gossip.
Are you not going to like, don't spend those 10 hours then gossiping about somebody?
Yeah.
With the whole, like, we should pray for them because, know. And, there was a whole season where people, I think, were maybe were going for it too much. And there was like, very few boundaries or whatnot, or people weren't taking Sabbaths. And so there was a few books that came out probably 5 to 10 years ago that gave everyone permission to be lazy in the church. And it's funny, man. I've always found that when I fight for my time, I lose more of it. But when I just surrender my time to the Lord, somehow I just have extra.
Right. Or he gives you the energy.
It gives me the energy, right, or whatever it might be.
Right.
And I think too, we also have it backwards too, because it's work 6 days a week.
Right.
And rest on the Sabbath.
Right. Yeah.
It's not, I have my 5 days I work, and then my other day, it's not my Sabbath because I actually will vacuum the house that day. So it's not a Sabbath.
Right. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I find it, I just find it, I think we talked about this in a couple of episodes ago, but we're good at justifying things. And so I think we can justify certain things. And again, I think self-care was an idol. Yep. I think our comfort is an idol. And we'll justify them as, again, a lot of times, often too, no one ever says, well, I just want to be lazy. But what they'll say is, well,
Sure.
whatever the case is. And so I think that, I think it just, what I observe a lot is, I think one of our top idols is just ourselves. And
the cult of me.
And that I've just never seen it satisfy.
Never.
You know, I've just and it can feel good for a season. And I think that's always the thing is like for a season it feels good to have boundaries and to tell people no and again like listen like I'm a person. I just had someone on my team the other day was like, or earlier today was like, "Hey, I texted you the other day, you didn't respond." Yeah, because it was a Sunday night. I don't want to respond to you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So like, I'm cool with like having certain boundaries and being
for sure.
But like I said, I think there is certainly a place where it goes too far, where you're trying to be whole. You're trying to make yourself whole. You're trying to appease yourself, or you know what I mean, or just. Find joy or happiness and content in anything else but God. Yeah. The first commandment is you shall have no other gods before me. Yep. And so when you that is no other gods, including yourself. Right. And I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot of things, consumerism and all that type of stuff. And I think a lot of stuff really is masked at what do I want, right? Mm-hmm. Like I could tell you a lot of things that I want and would prefer, and if it doesn't line up with God, how often I can conflate or justify, spin a good story, and make it seem like, well, no, this is for the good of me, and rather than taking God at His word.
Oh yeah. Oh, amen and amen to that.
I think just again that whole idea about just being provoked by idols and having a holy distress. There was another kind of point that you had that was really good, kind of a theme or a part you kind of camped out here in the message, and kind of this idea of like your marketplace mission, right? Don't just talk about the city, you're entering it, it's Paul's in Athens, right? And there, I think there's kind of a topic here to talk about where God has placed you. You have your family, you have your different relationships and things like that. But for hopefully everyone who's watching this has a job.
You got a job.
Working somewhere. Yeah. Maybe you're an entrepreneur. You're starting a business, or maybe you're working a 9 to 5, whatever the case might be. Maybe you're working part time. But your church, where's your church marketplace today? Like, where is that? Like, where would you say for people who maybe there's opportunity for them to share the gospel and to share their faith with people? Probably the most prominent place, or the place that they have the most access or bumping into people, wherever the case might be, who aren't believers, probably is in their 9 to 5, wherever that might be. And maybe just talking a little bit about I don't want to say responsibility, but our call as believers in the marketplace.
Yeah, I mean, that's where we're called to, right? Jesus says, as you go, that's as you live your life, make disciples. We spend, if you think about the portion of our week that we do spend at work, it's pretty high. Everything's shifted and changed a little bit. There's like the 9 to 5 isn't really the 9 to 5 anymore. People are now having to go back into office for a while. We're able to work at home. Just again, it depends on, like where you're working and what you're doing. I think, first and foremost is letting your faith be known.
Right.
I think that's great. Let your faith be known. I think there are interesting things now with companies and HR and all of that play into it. Sure. But I still think, man, we got to be bold in our belief and what we talk about. One of the things I find too often is that Christians they allow the other side, if you will, with other agendas to be loud and prominent. And they'll listen, or we'll listen, whatever it would be. And then when it comes time for us to talk about what we believe or what we think, a lot of times there's pushback, there's, I can't hear this is hate speech or whatever it might be. So, know that like with this does come, like that's when you really start to see, minor bouts of persecution break out, is when you start to get vocal, but we're called to be vocal. Now, if that's like, for instance, what I would do when I worked in construction is, I talked about what I did, that I was like, I was a youth pastor, and I did this because I want to be a youth pastor. And I would never shied away from it. If there was scripture that I was trying to memorize while I was like nailing bass to the floor. I was quoting scripture out loud.
Yeah.
They called me Bible boy, on one of the crews I worked with.
Love that.
And that just kind of, is what it is.
Yeah.
And one of the cool things is during that time, people would come to me almost secretly, like, Nicodemus at night, and be like, hey man, I grew up in church.
Yeah.
I haven't been for a while, but I got this thing with me and my girl. Would you be praying?
Yeah.
And so
That's cool.
you'll start to see that type of stuff. I think longevity matters, having like long relationships with people that you're able to show consistency in your faith, show honesty, show repentance, show grace. But yeah, we are all called to ministry. Some of us just do it vocationally. And that's more of that Ephesians chapter 4, fivefold of like those who do it vocationally need to be training up those who don't. Because they're to go out and be the church.
Yeah. That's good. And then you see Paul in the city, right?
Yes.
And he's now speaking to them, the unknown gods,
Yep.
which I thought was brilliant.
That was
great.
wild, huh?
That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But he's kind of, he's affirming, he affirms their religiosity and leverages the unknown God as a bridge. So he's being very strategic.
Yep.
In how he's connecting with them, right? So it's kind of this like connect before and then you correct, right?
Right.
And so how would you maybe in your experience, just examples you've seen or just your years, how would you explain or give examples of how can we connect with people without endorsing their lifestyle or sin that's going on in their life?
Well, that's so what makes that question interesting is that's kind of what Paul's their main issue with this passage would be, is that they thought Paul was too philosophical. They thought that it was too contextual.
When you say they, you're talking about theologians?
I'm talking about theologians from like 3rd, 4th century and beyond, even some modern day. And they said it was crossless because you don't see a mention of the cross, which knowing how Paul would preach, I think it's in there. I don't think we have the full, I don't think that,
full transcript
of his message. And they say there's too few converts, that there wasn't that many people that got saved afterwards. And that's where I go, okay, I could see where they come to that, because Paul does connect with, I see that you guys are religious. Here's an unknown God. Let me tell you, if you don't understand the backstory of all of that, or if you don't know it, then I think it does become even more like plausible to be like, yeah, Paul may have missed it on that one.
Right.
The fact that Paul didn't stay in Athens, people are like, what's up with that? The fact that next place he goes is Corinthians, and when he mentions, he actually, and I think it's in 1 Corinthians, he says that while I was with you, I didn't come with wise and persuasive words, but a demonstration of the Spirit's power. So there's the thought that like Paul was like, oh, I learned from that mistake. Now I'm going into Corinth and I'm just Christ crucified power. Call that good. No wise and persuasive words. But I think to each of those, for instance, too philosophical, I do think it was great that he connected with his audience. You have a bunch of people that have no clue who Yahweh is.
Right.
You have to figure out some way to get them to a point to where they're going to understand the cross and the sacrifice and the resurrection. Because like the Greeks, and I didn't get into this, but the Greeks didn't believe in a resurrection of the body. They believed in like a resurrection of the soul, but like Jesus was bodily resurrected, right? Proving just the power there. But I think, how do you get somebody who's like not even, if you think about this scale of like converts, so you have everything from like a -10, and that's like they are far away from God, don't care at all,
antagonistic,
yeah. And then you have like 0, which is like kind of neutral, don't really care, whatever it might be, and then you got 10, full blown like hallelujah, right? So how do you get a -10 to like a -5 or 0 even through conversation? Like how do you go there? And again, what Paul did, I thought was brilliant, is he spoke to, like, he did contextualize it to a point to where they could understand. He's like, let me tell you who this unknown God is.
Sure.
So now their interest is piqued. He did something to pique their interest. Whereas if he just would have gone on, they called him a babbler. When he's in the marketplace and he's telling them about Jesus, and they say, well, what's this babbler even talking about? What are these strange new ideas that we're hearing? And so it was intriguing enough, though, for them to bring it up there. But if he just goes up there, then he's a babbler, and which is a huge insult historically. Do you remember the movie Conan the Barbarian?
Yeah,
love that movie. Shout out Arnold, and actually Jerry Lopez was in that movie too. Jerry Lopez, one of the greatest pipe surfers ever. Anyways, so the reason why they called people barbarians, it was from I believe it's the Germanic tribes, is because when they talked, it sounded like they were going bar 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 bar. So when they call Paul, because they're in Athens, highly educated, when they call Paul a babbler, it's like blah 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 blah. Who is this guy? But some were so intrigued they said, no, let's bring him up. And then Paul is then able to go, okay, let me use what they already worship. And when we think about it, like people, if we can use what people already worship, they already worship themselves. They already worship their possessions. They all of that stuff. And he was then able to flip it and explain how Jesus really is the Messiah. He's the Savior.
Right.
And when you give there's too few converts. Well, just a couple of chapters earlier, we don't read about massive revival in Philippi. It's Lydia, and then this prisoner in his household that we just know about gets saved.
Right.
You see in Thessalonica that they say quite a few people get saved, but here it's it's Dionysus, Damaris, and a few other, so it talks about some others that followed Paul and became. And you could go, oh man, too few, but he wasn't speaking to a crusade. He didn't have, it wasn't like he had thousands of people under the sound of his voice.
Right.
He had a ruling council that was there. And I wish I knew how many people, I should know how many people are on that council, but it wasn't like there was this packed room of people that he's preaching to. So the fact that he got some of the top minds
right.
in that nation who would have probably been seen weak to then take on this new, to convert, that's pretty phenomenal, man.
Right, totally.
That's amazing. Yeah. So I don't even know where the original question was, but yeah, so I think what we can do is I think we just have to look for little inroads, when we have conversations with people. And I think if you really have a genuine care for another human being, it's going to come, that'll come out. It'll happen. You'll talk about their lives. You'll pray for them. You'll check up on, hey, I've been praying for you about this. What's going on? What's happening?
Yeah.
But it takes us doing it,
right,
and being intentional. And one of the things I've heard from Christians is, hey, I have no agenda. And I think there are times I have conversations with no agenda, sure, whatever. But I've got an agenda.
Yeah. Right.
I was sent with a mandate from Jesus to see disciples made.
That's right.
So
totally.
A lot of my conversations, if you're not a believer, is going to have an agenda to let's see where we can take this thing.
Right. For sure.
Well,
I think too, to that end, and kind of interesting to hear about, the certain, theologians and their, critique of this interaction. But I think a lot of times we as believers put so much pressure on converting people, and seeing it happen. And the truth of the matter is we're called to be obedient, and God makes the seed grow.
Yes.
And so, like you said, I love that kind of illustration. I might not be able to see the conversion happen,
right?
But maybe I get it from negative 10 to -5.
Yep.
And 5 years down the line, maybe they're in a different space, maybe a different church, whatever, and
different circumstance in life,
and the gospel, it just hits, right?
Yep.
And that transformation happens.
Yep.
But what I'm called to be obedient to is to share, is to whether it's my testimony,
Right.
whether it is like a very gospel presentation, or maybe it's to invite people into my home and just, they see how man, we pray and we recite scripture and how I talk to and treat my wife. And yes, we're not going to that because we do have church, or no, I can't partake in that activity. Right. It might just be a collection of interactions that, again, I may not see the end of how it plays out, but yes, our call is to make disciples, but sometimes your part to play in that discipleship process isn't the end.
Oh, for sure.
But it is. Yeah. But you're still just called to be obedient, and so I think we put so much pressure on, like, well, I'm not as smart as this person, or I'm not as eloquent as this person, or I'm not able to I don't have the hermeneutics or the deep theological backing to. It's okay. Just like be obedient and be and just share.
Yeah.
Just share testimony. You know what I mean? And I don't know if we can gauge the fruit of basically of how many people get saved, or how, but I think the fruit is like, well, were you just obedient with the people in your life? Well, again, the marketplace, maybe it's people in your family, maybe you married into a family, or you just have people in your own family that aren't believers. Yeah. Maybe it's the neighbors on your street. Like the parents at your kid's school, whatever it is, right? Like, are you just faithful in that context? And I would much rather get to the end and say, hey, I was faithful and I consistently shared and I was consistently open and invitational about my faith, and people just didn't respond, versus, well, I didn't do it because I wasn't ready, or I didn't. Exactly, and it's like, or well, that wasn't, you know what I mean? That wasn't the call. And I look at like Jesus. I mean, again, it's a little bit different example, but like Jesus, even in his own hometown, was met with resistance. Yep. And so there are certain places where they're more ripe and more ready and more just willing to hear, and maybe some areas that aren't. Exactly. And it doesn't. I can't make people, receive or deny. But my call is just to be obedient, to share the gospel.
The farmer scatters the seed.
That's right.
And there's different soils.
Yeah.
There's the hard soil. There's the thorny. There's the soft. There's but it doesn't say that the farmer doesn't not scatter the seed.
That's right.
So and Paul even says in Corinthians, I planted the seed. He says Apollos watered it, but God made it grow.
That's right.
So we just play our part.
That's right.
And I think in this particular, we would go into to Athens today, and here's kind of like to the other side of the argument in general. But like we would go into Athens today and be like, oh my gosh, look at all these idols. Oh my gosh, this is obviously very, to use like modern terms. Oh my gosh, this is very liberal. Yeah. We're not gonna, there's no way they're gonna listen to me. I'm just gonna keep my head down and get through Athens. No.
Yeah. Come on.
Like Paul's like, he sees this. He's like, I got to talk.
Right.
And that's like the thing of kind of. Like
that's so good, dude.
Is Paul's other alternative just not to say anything?
Right.
Oh, I don't want to go up to the the Areopagus. No thanks. Woo. That's fine. I know you guys have your thoughts and your beliefs, so that's fine. You're good.
Yeah.
But
that's good, bro.
And then funny too, like the people that would critique. And I mean, it's always easy to look back, hindsight's 2020. But again, I still think he crushed this particular thing. But we will look at the way people do it, and we criticize the way they talk about you, or the way they. And for me, then it goes back to shout out D.L. Moody again, where he said to somebody, they criticized the way that he would evangelize, and he says, "I like my way of doing it better than your way of not doing it."
That's right.
So and we figure it out.
Yeah.
I've gone through so many different iterations of how I share Jesus with people. From everything from standing on street corners and parks, like literally preaching and seeing salvation, not the wild, like, you're all going to hell, to doing it while, breaking bricks and bursting soda cans to gain an audience, to sitting with someone at a cafe day after day as I see them and I talk to them and I get to know them and we talk about my faith, and all of a sudden then we're emailing back and forth, and But I think whatever it is, just do it and just get started.
That's
just
right.
try.
Yeah, that's good. I think that kind of leads us to one of, I think, last major point I think we'd hit in this one is this kind of idea of, just mixed responses, right? And so, again, this idea of obedience over outcomes, right? So some people will sneer, some people have delay,
Yep.
some people believe.
Yeah.
But we succeed by just obeying,
Yep.
right? But there are some of those outcomes, right? There's mockery.
Yep.
There's curiosity and there's conversion, right? We talked about, conversion, like our role is just to continue to be obedient. And sometimes that leads to curiosity, sometimes it leads to conversion, but sometimes it does lead to mockery.
Yeah.
And I think we have to be honest and just be plain about there is again, whether it's in your family, whether it's in your street, whether it's in your own community, there is an outcome that people might mock you, look at you differently, exclude you.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Some people might mean Bible boy
Yeah.
as not a compliment.
Not a compliment.
You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
And so I'm just curious, how do we prepare our hearts for mockery without getting cynical? Because I think there is that online too. You see these people, and I don't particularly love that part of the kind of the church ethos where it's become cynical, and so then, like you said, we almost we treat them as them, and not you know what I mean? Like there's them because they sin, but then we see people as we kind of we put a wall up there that's not really meant to be there. So I'm curious, how do you feel like us as believers we're to prepare our hearts for the mockery, but maybe not becoming cynical in that?
So definitely, always know that the Lord loves people. So therefore, we're called to love people.
That's good.
That the way that love expresses itself can be different, for sure. So, so understanding it's kind of like I said, we hate the sin, love the sinner. So maybe it's hate the mocking, love the mocker. And understanding that they're coming from either a standpoint of whatever it might be, and knowing that's okay. It does go a little bit deeper, and this is hard because this is where things can get nuanced.
Sure.
Is because there is a level of, especially if you are in any kind of leadership role, a level of protection that you need to implement for whether it's you and your family, if you're a pastor, you and your congregation, you and your team, whatever it might be, where you have to figure out, is this mocker a mocker from the standpoint of they are an evil person, and yes, there are evil people who has an agenda to take sheep out of the fold,
right?
Has an agenda to sway your kid towards a certain position, has whatever that is.
Totally.
And that's where then you have to have the mocker step back, or separate yourself from them.
Yeah.
If they're a mocker just because they're foolish, that's the Proverbs, the wise, foolish, and evil. I did a whole message on this back in, I think, December. But then there's the standpoint of, are they just foolish? So are they mocking because it's kind of like some ideology they held on to, or they know what is their heart? Because maybe can they be? Maybe they're at that point where it's they're mocking, but they're also on the teetering on the edge of, but I would like to hear more, but they're mocking because of their surroundings, the other people that they're listening to you with. Is there that peer pressure, whatever that might be? So I think just keeping our hearts soft towards people always, and then really leaning into the discernment of, is this someone who's just foolish?
Right.
Or are they just flat out anti-God?
That's good.
Yeah.
There's definitely that good distinction there, right? There's definitely people who maybe it's a reflex for them, and they're whatever the case is, and God's still working, and I think that's where discernment's okay, God, what is this, what type of person am I talking to right now? And then there are certainly people that, like you said, it's this is I love Psalms 1. I always just say this is my favorite Psalm. There's a lot of Psalms that I just love, but Psalms 1, right, talks about the blessed is a person who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, stand in the way of the sinners, or sit in the company of mockers. Blessed is that person. And so unnecessarily or overly exposing yourself to sitting in the company of mockers is actually a detriment to you and your soul, and probably
Yep.
to your ministry.
To your ministry, to your family, possibly to the people you lead.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then you'd be criticized for being unloving, for not,
Totally.
but
Right.
that's
Yeah.
good. That's a great verse.
Yeah, man. And then kind of I'm curious, what are some wise next steps for someone who says, so maybe you're talking with someone and you think that this person is maybe more a person who's curious, or maybe they're mocking, maybe you've seen some, you feel like there's an discernment there, you feel like, oh, maybe there could be an open door here. What do you think are some wise next steps for someone as you're maybe evangelizing with someone and you feel like there could still be an open door,
And there's still an
but
open
there's maybe there's some contention there, whatever the case might be.
Yeah. Having true care and concern for them. So it is that, I talked about it earlier, but it is that, like, hey, what can I pray for you about?
Yeah.
Because most of the time people won't turn down prayer, but then you show that you actually heard them, and you catch back up with them. How are things going?
Yeah.
How's the particular situation we're praying for? But I think that's one. I think having again ongoing conversation and allowing, having conversation in safe places or decent places or whatever, that it allows them to voice their opinion and thought as well.
Absolutely.
So that you're just not speaking at somebody. I find right now in different situations I'm talked at. I'm not talking about Christians, but
Sure.
just in different, whether it's political situations or ideological situations, whatever it might be. I'm like, they're just talking at me. And as opposed to, let's have a dialogue about this.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think on this? How did you arrive at these conclusions? So being able to dialogue with somebody that does that. And then, like, in a world that is so digital and in a world that is so fleeting as far as, we're on to the next thing, on to the next trend, I think just kind of being consistent in their life and there.
Yeah. That's good. Any wise steps for the flip side of that? People who you would, that someone that is in your sermon, you go, this person I think is like a mocker, like this is antagonistic.
Yep.
This, what I mean? This is harmful to me and or my family or people I lead. Wise next steps and how to step into that.
Yeah. And this is where people are like, oh, it's so unloving to cut somebody out of your life. And I think you don't want to do it too quickly, because too many people, the trend right now is just, I'm just not going to talk to you anymore.
Sure.
So that's not good.
Yeah.
But I think, and this is where it gets tricky, because not everyone comes at you violently. So it's not like every time you get together with somebody, they're going to be like, I'm anti your faith, and this is what you should believe, and this is what society should say, and da 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 da. And like, so they're not always going to come at you like that.
Yeah.
Some of the time they're gonna come at you with just very sweet, very very chill, but all of a sudden, you notice them asking provoking questions to your children.
Right.
And you're like, you're not the one that's supposed to talk to my kid about that.
Right.
Oh, no, it's okay. I just love them.
Right.
I love your kids.
Right.
That's great. But like, that's not an agenda we follow here. Right. Or like even, maybe like within like a team, like if you're leading a team or a business or whatnot, they come in and they're charismatic and they're fun and they're nice. And they're posing questions that will cause people to come to unbiblical conclusions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
So I think just watching that stuff and watching, like, as you talk to them, like, hey man, I'd rather you not say that around my kids, or hey man, I'd rather you not, talk to the team about that stuff.
Right.
And then watch, okay, did they not?
Yeah.
Did they step back? Did they just keep pressing in different ways? And that's when it's pretty like, yeah. And then what you do is you just say, hey, I just can't have you around.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Like, I hate to do this, but we've said some things to each other, and you obviously haven't respected my side. And so this is so sad, but until further like notice, we gotta part ways.
Yeah.
And that's okay to do. It's okay to part ways, especially if you're really trying to care for, not only, like yourself, but of course other people that God's entrusted to you.
Yeah. I think especially for if you grow up in church, certain contexts, and hearing that can be shocking. Like, what? I thought you're supposed to, and no one's too far gone, or whatever the case is, and so that can be shocking to hear. I think what is really important in conversations like that too is like almost back to where we started is having people in your life with experience and fruit and people you're submitted to that you can go, hey, I'm having this, I've been having this conversation with somebody. Some of these conversations have gone, what do you think? And someone that can go, yeah, I think that's someone you need to step away from. Or, you know what? Hey, I think we can, you know what I mean?
Sure,
whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
And so
you might be being too gnarly.
Yeah, I think that's where, again, having people that you're submitted to and having people that you, people who are farther along in their faith journey that can speak into your life and can correct you one way or another and counsel. Yeah, I think that's a huge. That would be an area I would like. Hey, you should very much lean on your community of people, and not make that decision alone unless again, like you feel an incredible conviction the Lord is speaking clearly on that.
Agreed.
It's like you should check in on some people about that. But really great message.
Thanks, man.
Come on now. Hey, if you made it to the end, make sure to drop best boy. What was it? Bible boy in the chat, and we're excited. Continuing on next week.
Yeah, next week
where we going?
We're going into Corinth, bro. Acts 18.
Come on.
And I don't want to spoil too much of it, but it's gonna be a good one. And then a side note, we did have a question. Hey, what's our next sermon series? I don't know if they were like, can we just be done with this? We've been in
Acts this whole year.
But what we're gonna do, we're hopefully gonna finish up Acts by December. Do kind of a Christmas themed, birth of Christ, portion of scriptures, and then jump in 2025 to, you'll have to wait and see.
That's so.
Or 2026, I should say 2026 Yeah.
What's crazy because we actually know.
We do know, which is wild for us.
Pretty
amazing.
Ahead of there's September and we're on the board here. But yeah, stick around. Hey, do us a favor again. Thank you so much for watching. Yeah. Hey, if this podcast blessed you, copy the link, send it to someone, send them the sermon as well, and let them know, hey, this really blessed me. I think this would bless you too. And send it to one person, 2 people this week. And we'll make sure people to have get a hold of this, and hopefully it blesses their life and encourages them to be more in their word.
Yes.
And to dive deeper. And so thanks for sticking around to the end, watching along, and we'll see you next week on If I Had More Time.